Joining us now is Democratic Senator Mark Warner of Virginia. He is the vice chair of the Intelligence Committee. Senator, it's always great seeing you. I thank you for your time. Before, Senator, we get into the Hegseth issue, I just want your thoughts, if you would, on Pope Francis, his impact and his legacy.
Well, I think he made the church more inclusive. I think the fact that a pope would speak to issues of social justice, I'm not a Catholic myself, but I thought he made put a human face that brought a lot of young people, not just across North America, but across the world, back into the Catholic Church. And I think he's going to be a hard pope to replace.
And now getting to the other breaking news of the day, President Trump just said he has confidence in Secretary Hegseth. You've opposed Hegseth from day one. You voted against his confirmation. You called on him to resign after the first Signal group chat issue. You're doing so again today. What do you think about these latest revelations?
I think it shows a guy that's way in over his head in a job that's much too big for him. And you saw the little snippet where he fought or pushed back. Well, he didn't deny that he put his family members on this chat. The notion that this is somehow not classified information, the fact that attack plans were being sent out and around before our pilots had actually bombed the Houthis. I would love to take Pete Hegseth down to the Norfolk Naval Station, which is the home port of the aircraft carrier Truman, from which these strikes were launched, and explain to the family and friends of folks on the Truman how this kind of information getting out wouldn't have put their loved ones in harm's way, because he couldn't. And I think it is amazing that he's not been held accountable. I think it's remarkable as well, as you see a number of his senior officials quit. And this is an example, again, of chaos on steroids that are coming out of the DOD. And I just wonder, Jose, when are my Republican senator friends who say they're for national security going to say, this is too much, this is just a bridge too far, and join me and others and say this guy needs to be replaced?
And so, Senator, I'm just wondering, because this would be the second time of confirmation that the Secretary of Defense has utilized this Signal app for communications that included sensitive information, to say the least. For example, do you all in the Senate, in the Intelligence Committee, utilize Signal, the Signal app to communicate any kind of information? And it just seems like it's such a basic question.
Well, Signal, I use Signal. Matter of fact, Signal is safer than traditional cell phone communications, particularly since we know China, through the Salt Typhoon hack, has hacked into our systems. But using Signal, to decide where I'm going to go have dinner with a friend is very different than putting on Signal classified information. And anyone who denies that attack plans before an attack takes place or during an attack taking place, putting out on a non-secure channel, and Signal is not secure, it's better than normal, but it's not fully secure. Saying that's not classified either shows a remarkable ignorance, or they're just flat out lying, because anyone at the DOD or in the intelligence community, if they had done this behavior, they would be fired without question.
Senator, how secure or insecure is Signal?
We do know that our adversaries, the Chinas and the Russians of the world, have tried to penetrate Signal. The thing that we also don't have an answer from yet, because if they have been able to penetrate, you can sometimes drop in malware without actually having control of the phone. We don't even have an answer from the first group of folks that included the vice president and the national security advisors and others. Did anybody even screen their phones for malware? Now we've got Hegseth and his family members and a host of others. Is anybody going back and checking these devices? This is basic cyber and Intel 101, and I have zero confidence that any steps have been taken on remediation. And we've got to have, I've got all the Democrats on Senate Intel. We have written repeatedly on this, gotten no response. when are Republicans going to find the courage to actually speak up for our national security, or are they going to allow this constant drift at DOD, which, again, undermines morale when you see the top getting off with behavior that nobody else would get away with. And then you've seen these more serious folks get fired recently at DOD. I think this is undermining the confidence that our men and women who protect our country have in this senior leadership. And it's time for this guy to go.
Secretary of Defense Pete Hegseth responding. The embattled Defense Secretary just spoke, seeming to attack some of his closest former advisors and the media after we learned overnight that he shared detailed military plans in a second Signal chat. This one included his wife and his brother. Let's get right to CNN's Natasha Bertrand in Washington for the latest on all these very new, very significant developments.
Good morning, John. Yes, we confirmed last night that Secretary Hegseth did have a second Signal chat that included his brother, his wife, and his lawyer, in which he disclosed sensitive details about U.S. military operations against the Houthis in Yemen. This was around the same time as that first Signal chat that was disclosed last month, when the editor of The Atlantic was accidentally included in a Signal chat that Hegseth had with other cabinet officials. This, of course, is different. It was on his personal phone, and we are told that this was a group chat that was set up as part of his confirmation process so he could kind of strategize with his closest allies. But he continued using that chat, we are told, after he was confirmed as Secretary of Defense, and ultimately he did end up sharing information about military plans with the people on that chat, many of whom, including his wife, did not have an obvious need to know about these military operations. Now, Hegseth did issue his first public comments about this just a few minutes ago from the White House at the Easter egg roll.
This is what the media does. They take anonymous sources from disgruntled former employees, and then they try to slash and burn people and ruin their reputations. Not going to work with me, because we're changing the Defense Department, putting the Pentagon back in the hands of warfighters, and anonymous smears from disgruntled former employees on old news doesn't matter.
So two things, John. First, neither Parnell, his spokesperson, Sean Parnell, his spokesperson, nor Hegseth there are actually denying the substance of the story, that he did have this Signal group chat that included his wife, his brother, and his lawyer. They are instead blaming it on disgruntled former employees, which is the second point here. Dan Caldwell and Darren Selnick, two of the officials that Hegseth fired last week, they actually were some of Hegseth's closest advisors over a decade. And one of the officials that left the Pentagon last week, John Olliott, who was until last month Hegseth's top spokesperson, he is saying publicly in a new op-ed that he wrote in Politico last night that it's been a month of total chaos at the Pentagon. And he said it's hard to see Defense Secretary Hegseth remaining in his role for much longer. John?
Yeah, that statement from the secretary right there, in the immortal words of Ben Bradley and All the President's Men, a classic non-denial denial right there at the White House. Natasha Bertrand, thank you very much. Kate?
Yeah, and just looking down, as he said, returning the Pentagon to warfighters, John Olliott actually said in the past month, what they have been going through is not returning the Pentagon to warfighting, but just, it says the Pentagon focus is no longer on warfighting, but on endless drama. That from his former spokesperson. Joining us right now to talk more about this is Jane Harman, the former ranking member of the House Intelligence Committee. Thank you so much for being here. I mean, I recall you saying after the first Signal scandal broke that it should remind everyone that complacency invites catastrophe, and now news of a new Signal group chat and new controversy. What's your reaction to this?
Well, this would be a good news day to accept Hegseth's resignation. I mean, all the news is about this extraordinary pope that we just lost, and so it might be buried. I can't imagine how he survives this. His key staff, as you just reported, has been fired by him. Some of them were on the second call. There are rumors that there may have been as many as 20 calls on unsecured platforms. I mean, that is, I don't know what you call it, tradecraft 00.1. You don't do this. And I can't imagine that Congress will defend him at this point. I wonder if the president will defend him. He's embarrassing the president. So I think there are two questions. One is when he resigns, but the second one is who will accept the job, who is really competent given this history and given the chaos at the Pentagon. Let's just look at what Marco Rubio said. He just said that this draft executive order taking away half his department, this draft executive order was in the news the last 2 days, is fake news. So what this looks like is cabinet secretaries don't make decisions. They are made somewhere else, Project 2025 or who knows. And I can't imagine that the capable people out there who are Republicans who could run the Pentagon would want the job.
One thing we know, the latest this morning, is coming from the White House press secretary saying that the president still has full faith in Pete Hegseth. We know with the president that can change quickly, but that is the first response from them on this latest Signal chat. On top of this, you have a top advisor until basically days ago of Pete Hegseth, a former Pentagon press secretary for Hegseth, calling this whole thing a month of chaos. This is this op-ed that Natasha Bertrand was just referencing, and two parts I want to pull out. Number one, saying it's hard to see Defense Secretary Pete Hegseth remaining in his role much longer, to the point that you were making. And also this, even strong backers of the secretary like me, this is from John Uliad, me must admit the last month has been a full-blown meltdown at the Pentagon and is becoming a real problem for the administration. And just from your perspective, what does it do when a secretary's longtime advisor...
You see here is Trump making a move to replace Hegseth. Now, in front of the scenes, he's defending him. But, let's be clear what the NPR and other sources are reporting, right? This is multiple sources reporting it now. You can find it all over the front page of the internet, saying he's making a move to replace him. It's not an instant thing, right? I'm guessing he's going to want to have his person in place if this is what pans out, to fire him and then a day later or whatnot announce, oh, here's going to be my new guy or my new gal, and we're going to put him or her in front of the Senate and get them confirmed. And hopefully this time he picks somebody. I have no faith in him picking a person with good morals, but at least somebody on paper that's qualified for the job. But who knows? But the point is, this is what we all knew was going to happen. This is always what happens with Trump picks. Either they leave because Trump's insane, or they get fired for some gross act of incompetence, or they get thrown under the bus for doing what Trump asked them to do, but, facing the consequences for doing something potentially illegal, but certainly immoral, right? And no matter what, it ends with them out the door, on their own volition or against their will or what have you. And this is what was going to happen with Hegseth. We said it faster than usual. Why? Because the man was not qualified for the job. He wasn't. Put aside the alleged issues with drinking. Put aside his political views. Was not qualified, and even Donald is realizing that now.